The clerk read the bill.
HB 7 by Guillen, relating to public services and programs in the southern border region of the state to address the effects of ongoing criminal activity and public health threats.
Mr. Bryant, the clerk needs to lay out the bill first, please. Proceed.
And public health threats, including methods of financing those services.
Mr. Bryant, for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of HB 7 under Rule 4, Section 32, C2 and 3 of the House Rules on the grounds that the bill analysis is inaccurate and substantially or materially misleading.
Please bring your point of order down front. Point of order has been withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Guillen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, HB 7 addresses funding challenges in the judicial system, law enforcement, and other public services along the border region, which are in large part currently maintained by local taxpayer dollars. Through a variety of programs, HB 7 will assist the judicial system, law enforcement, public services, and health and safety, property owners, educational institutions, businesses, and communities in the border region who find themselves bearing the brunt of the current situation on the border. Our members, our fellow Texans need our help, and HB 7 helps deliver it where it's most needed. We do have some amendments.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Turner, for what purpose?
Would the gentleman yield for some questions?
The gentleman yield for questions.
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Chairman Guillen. And so I just want to make sure, before we get into the amendments, to understand the premise. So HB 7, you said, is designed to provide additional court services in the border region. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And that's to handle certain judicial
Challenges.
Proceedings coming out of some of the border security concerns that you've outlined?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then you talked about a grant program as well?
Yes.
So part of the grant program is to help fund these court proceedings. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And then, but there's other grants in the bill also, are there not?
Yes.
And what are those designed to do?
Well, there's pots to deal with protection equipment, infrastructure, the criminal justice facilities, public safety personnel, secure trade, secure transportation, victims compensation, higher ed, economic development, those types of things.
And am I correct that there's a portion of the bill that deals with compensating landowners for property damage?
Right.
Could you speak some about how that's going to work?
Yeah, we've...
and why it's necessary. I know we heard some testimony in State Affairs Committee about why this is a problem.
Absolutely. So very often in our neck of the woods, we have high-speed chases and other activity, and they go in through people's property, bust fences, hit people's homes, chases because they've got illegal, or they've got immigrants, or they're doing some human trafficking and they're trying to get away, or they've got drugs or things like that.
Okay. And so in instances like that where a landowner or property owner's property has been damaged, they would be able to seek restitution essentially through the state? Is that what's designed to take place here?
There will be able to seek compensation for damaged property due to these incidents.
Okay. And how will they go about seeking compensation?
I've got an amendment that moves it into the Attorney General's office, and they would go through that. They would have a program there, and it would go through them, and it would be through the Victims Compensation Fund, a separate account in the Victims Compensation Fund.
And I did see that amendment, and I know we'll be on it in a minute, but in the underlying bill, since that's what we're talking about now, how is it originally intended to be administered?
I think in the original bill, we have it at the Comptroller's office, but in speaking to them, we agreed that it was going to be a big challenge and that it was a better fit over at the Attorney General's. Office.
Okay. And then moving on, you have a section of the bill, I think it's towards the end, that deals with economic development.
Right.
Actually, before we get to economic development, there's an educational program section as well.
Right.
And what is that section intended to
Creates
achieve?
a program for higher education institutions to recruit and train individuals for careers in homeland security and other fields related to border safety.
I see. And is that program specific to higher education institutions in the border region, or would that be a statewide program?
It allows the agency to make rules.
The coordinating board
But ideally, it would be on the border region, yes.
is the agency the higher education coordinating
Yes.
board?
Yes.
Okay. So it could be statewide, but your intent would be for this to be a border region focused program for colleges and universities in that region. Okay. And so moving on to the economic development portion of the bill, Border Protection Economic Development Initiative. And there's the first section deals with a campaign for businesses and tourism. Can you explain what the goal there is?
Well, that's also addressed in the amendment
Okay.
that we've got forthcoming. We've dealt with several stakeholders, several entities that had concerns, and so we agreed to some language in the amendment that directs the Governor's Office of Economic Development and Tourism to develop a campaign for economic development and tourism.
Okay. And what are the goals of that campaign? Is it corporate relocations? Is it enhancing the sales tax base? What's the...
Well, the goal is to shift the focus of the challenges that we have on the border to more positive things like investment.
Okay. So, and I don't think I'm disagreeing at all with that goal. I just trying to understand how it relates here. So it's to provide more opportunities through the governor's Department of Economic Development.
Right.
To fund, are they funding specific projects or funding like economic development offices, or what?
No, it's
how would it work?
It's more about like a campaign to do so.
Campaign.
Yeah.
Like a PR campaign?
And the idea and the language came from some of the border members from this chamber.
I see. So like a public relations campaign?
Yes.
Okay, I see. With the goal of attracting new business?
Attracting investment, yes.
Okay. And in promoting tourism as well, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a beautiful part of the state, and I agree. It's a great opportunity to enhance tourism. And so I think that's a great goal. And then finally, the last, or towards the end, the last section of the, I guess, on the last page of the bill at least, there's a gifts, grants, and donations program. So is that intended to solicit, and I know seek and apply for available federal funds, which we always want to do, but you're also trying to solicit gifts from private entities as well?
Right. It was just an idea that we've got from some of the stakeholders,
Okay.
just in case we could raise money from elsewhere.
Okay. And would private money be earmarked for specific purposes? Like, would it be directed into the education component or the economic development and tourism component, or would it go into the court component?
We don't go into detail into that, so it would just have to be towards what we're doing in the bill.
Okay. What agency or entity would collect this money or raise this money?
I think it's the comptroller's office.
The comptroller's office?
Yeah.
And would then the comptroller's office then decide how to allocate the money?
I think so. I mean, I believe that it would come into the state, and we don't expect very much. This is just language that some of the stakeholders gave us that they thought would be good. But in the case we do, I think it would be put towards all of the things we're spending on in this bill.
Okay, so any of the goals in the bill or the strategies in the bill would be eligible for this additional funding, whether it be federal grants or private donations?
Absolutely.
Okay, and your understanding of the bill is that the comptroller's office would decide how to allocate that money?
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We do have some amendments.
The following amendment, the clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Guillen.
The chair recognizes Mr. Guillen to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment,
Hey, Sharon told me.
this amendment clarifies language in several sections of the bill based upon stakeholder feedback. It makes two specific changes. First, it reassigns the administration of the various resiliency programs from the Governor's Office Criminal Justice Division to the Governor's Office trustee programs for broader reach. And second, it moves the administration of the Border Protection Property Damage Account from the Comptroller's Office to the Office of the Attorney General and specifies additional procedural details of its administration. And I move adoption.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Weiner, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for
The
some
gentleman yield
questions?
for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Representative Guillen. This is a long amendment. We've been trying to wrap our heads around it. I want to make sure we understand everything. So as I'm reading your amendment, you're significantly shortening the grants offered through the Criminal Justice Division and limiting their application in some ways. Is that correct?
No, we're just we're moving it from a division in the Governor's Office to another division in the Governor's Office.
Okay. Am I missing the provision about the Border Protection Secure Trade Fund, or is that still there?
No, that should still be there.
Okay, I'm not sure I see that. So I see initially that provision had the Border Protection Equipment and Infrastructure Fund, correct?
All right.
The Criminal Justice Facilities Fund, the Border Protection Personal Safety or Public Safety Personnel Fund, and the Border Protection Secure Trade Fund. Are those all still in the amendment, or did any of those come out?
There are some of the funds that we consolidated together, but everything is still represented.
Okay. Is there anything new that could be constructed in that grant program?
No.
Okay. Thank you. The other portion I was looking at is that Border Property Damage Compensation Fund.
Right.
How are you changing the terms of who's eligible to receive money?
We're not changing who's eligible. We're just
Okay.
we're just moving.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, the language that was jumping out at me was there's now language around trespassers specifically.
Okay, what page are you talking about?
I'm looking at bottom of page 5 of your amendment. And
Okay.
the original bill, I believe, referred to it as just damage caused by somebody crossing the border instead of by a trespasser.
Right. This is language that we got from stakeholders that is more encompassing of all the different incidents that we've had in the border region, and so we incorporated it in here.
Okay. Are there any other places where stakeholders asked y'all to make changes that you can point out to us?
Pretty much the entire document was stakeholders asking to do changes, yes.
Well, I'm struggling with 9 pages of changes pretty quickly. So you've changed who's overseeing the fund. Now that's the Attorney General instead of the Comptroller, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Is there anything, guess I'm seeing language about hearing and pre-hearing conferences. What is that necessary for? I don't think that was in the...
Tell me which page we're talking about?
I am looking at the top of page 8.
Yeah, the Attorney General may appoint hearing officers to conduct hearings or pre-hearing conferences. Under this chapter, a hearing or pre-hearing conference is open to the public unless the hearing officer or Attorney General determines in a particular case that all or part of the hearing or conference should be held in private because a private hearing or conference is in the interest of the applicant. This is, again, language we got from the Attorney General's office.
Okay, so that's just what they consider as clarifying. There's some language in here, subchapters C through H, Chapter 2001 Government Code do not apply. Do you know the purpose of those?
I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
sure about that. That's also, of course, language from them, but I can look that up.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Representative Gann.
Move adoption.
Mr. Guillen, since the amendment is up to the author, is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair has none. The amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Guillen.
The chair recognizes Mr. Guillen to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment creates...
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Niavi Criado, for purpose.
I raise a point of order against further consideration of the Guillen Amendment under Rule 11, Section 6C of the House Rules on the grounds that the amendment takes the form of a complete or substantial substitute and was untimely filed.
Please bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Guillen to close on the amendment.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Morales, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for some questions about the amendment?
Yes.
The gentleman yields for questions.
Yes.
Chairman Guillen, with the amendment you added, there's a line from the amendment under Section 421.112, use of funds, that talks about a detention center regardless of age or gender. Can we get some clarification on what that means? Are these family detention centers?
What page are you referring to?
It's under Section 421.
421.
0.112.
So you can't tell me which page that is?
Okay, I'm looking. Okay, we're bringing it. So, but back to the question, do you know?
I don't see that section in this amendment.
Do you have it? I don't have it. What's the section?
Okay. Members, this amendment creates a border program within DPS consisting of a border protection unit led by the unit chief, a appointed by the governor that is directly responsible to the commission for all conduct of the unit. The unit chief may appoint deputy unit chiefs. That's what this amendment does, and I move adoption.
Mr. Guillen, since the amendment is acceptably altered, the objection to the adoption amendment, there is a record vote that has been requested. The clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Guillen voting aye. This is the amendment. Show Mr. Raymond voting aye. So Mr. Morales of Maverick voting aye. Mr. Price voting aye. Mr. Hunter voting aye. Ms. Lopez of Cameron voting aye. Have all members voted? There being 90 ayes and 51 nays, the amendment is adopted.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Weiner, for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of House Bill 7 under Rule 4, Section 32C on the grounds that the bill analysis is inaccurate and misleading.
Please bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Guillen to close the bill.
Move passage.
The question occurs on passage to engrossment of HB 7. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye. Dr. Olafson voting aye. Mr. Guillen voting aye. Mr. Rainey voting aye. Mr. Harless voting aye. Mr. Gertis voting aye. Mr. Raymond voting aye. Mr. Schofield voting aye. Mr. Kane voting aye. Ms. Weiner voting, I assume, nay. Have all members voted? There being 92 ayes and 51 nays, HB 7 is passed in engrossment.